All right, so now I'd like to turn the program over to Carol to introduce our speaker today. Thank you.
All right, that was fun. Yes, our speaker is inspired by, I think many of us have driven on Highway 255, and for a long time there's all this big equipment, and now there's water and mud, and what the heck is going on? Well, luckily we have Robert Wall, who is the CalTrans District 1 Chief of the Coastal Stewardship Branch, here to talk about this project and explain what's going on. His group helps restore wetlands and remove invasives. Robert holds a bachelor's degree in geography from Humboldt State and a Master of Rural Town Planning from CSU Chico. He's been a certified land use planner since 2001 and served as land use planner and director for both the city of Eureka and the county of Humboldt. And so welcome, thanks for joining us, Robert. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for the opportunity to share this project with you. A couple disclaimers. CalTrans works in WebEx, and I'm going to try and get my PowerPoint up without a hitch. So let's see if I can, for some reason my screen.
Maggie, is he able to share screen? Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm really sorry about this.
There it is.
Is that it?
Yep.
And
I think there's a start slideshow up there.
yeah. Which screen are you seeing?
I think we're seeing yours. We also see your next slide, but
Interesting.
yeah, you could probably get by with that, but I think there's a way to just start from the beginning, but this will work too.
Oops.
Yeah, I think from the beginning, isn't that the far left icon up there on the top? Does that work?
F5.
F5.
Huh.
Keep showing my next one. Okay, well, my disclaimer is, if you can see that, I'll start from there. Thank you for having me. My first or second disclaimer is I am not a biologist, and as Marty Lay knows, I'm not an engineer. I did work for SHN for, I think, about 4 years. I am a land use planner. I did a stint with the city of Eureka and was their director for 4 years, 5 years. And then when Kevin Hamblin stepped aside for a year, I was had the fortunate opportunity to be the planning director when Humboldt County decided to legalize recreational cannabis. And that was for about a year, and that was a challenging transition. Now I'm with CalTrans, and I'm happy to be here. Hopefully you can go to the next slide. As Carol noted, 255 has had some activity based on mitigation needs for our Eureka-Arcata Corridor projects. And here's a slide of exactly what's going on. Obviously, the big ticket item here is the Indianola undercrossing, which I am told will hopefully be under construction spring of 22. You've probably driven the decel lanes here, if you can see my cursor. And the cable median barriers there, and Jacoby Creek Bridge. You've probably dealt with kind of the headache of driving past that project. Hopefully not too big of a headache. And that project is due to start again this June. And then we have some tide gates, 5 tide gates that we replaced. Essentially, we at CalTrans affected about 10¼ acres of wetland, different types of wetland, but predominantly freshwater wetland with some tidally influenced aspects. And we had to mitigate for those. But I wanted to share, and if you might remember when we did our federal consistency hearing with the Coastal Commission, there was a requirement, probably a good one, that we help out the bay trails. And so we are donating or giving, sponsoring the bay trail mitigation also. You'll see this yellow piece of pie here in the chart. That's the completed Arcata Trail north. And so we're mitigating for that. And then this is an exciting part right here, the Bay Trail South, which I heard yesterday is at 60% completion in regarding the engineering and slated to go to the California Coastal Commission this August for a hearing. And fingers crossed we'll have that trail connected or at least started next spring, the construction of that. So the mitigation was challenging. With all these projects, there's what we call a no net loss, where if you fill a wetland, you gotta produce a wetland and then some. And so there are some ratios that the Army Corps of Engineers, the North Coast Water Board, and the California Coastal Commission need or want as a result of our impacts. We negotiated, and I want to put a shout out to Tammy Camper, who is on this call. She was part of my team, an integral part of this team, and was neck deep in a lot of these negotiations and work. So thank you, Tammy. And then Denise is here also. She is on this team, and Tammy and Denise did work together on this. But we negotiated with the agencies, and I'm going to be polite. The Coastal Commission wanted a different type of mitigation. We had an opportunity to create wetlands at the Samoa site at the DeMello Dairy at 255 and Old Samoa Road. But the Coastal Commission actually wanted more. And for various reasons, we went with spartina removal. I'm sorry, I'm a little out of sync here with the slide here, but we do our due diligence to mitigate wetlands on site. So just showing that, but here's the spartina eradication, and then here is the wetland restoration at Samoa. So the spartina eradication was negotiated with the California Coastal Commission, and this is an SHN slide. Essentially, we negotiated about 180 acres of spartina removal within Humboldt Bay to satisfy the wetland fill on the corridor for the California Coastal Commission. And we actually signed a co-op with the Harbor District yesterday to send an RFP out, request for proposal for a contractor to begin controlling spartina in perpetuity. There's also an endowment going to the Wiyot tribe, a non-wasting endowment where they can control spartina in perpetuity and bring back their native grasses and some better diversity. Spartina is an introduced species from Chile, came in with our lumber ships, and really is an aggressive monoculture. It really wreaks havoc on our native plants and animals and biodiversity. And so the Wiyot tribe entered into a partnership with us at CalTrans and also with the Harbor District to control that. So Here's a shot of what spartina looks like. You've probably seen it. You've probably seen the marsh masher or marsh master, depending on who you're talking to. But essentially, it is a solution. There are mechanical means, and you can also get in there, and you've probably seen the California Conservation Corps or RCAA out there with weed whackers, trying to get a handle on the spartina. And so the benefits of that, again, are the Wiyot tribe really wants to take their island back from this monoculture. They want their native plants, and they do want to increase their aquatic biodiversity. So on to the, back to the dairy. So this is our site. A couple shots of the DeMello dairy. We purchased the property, I believe, around 2000, before 2010. And as a part of our hearings with the Coastal Commission, we had to promise them that we had viable mitigation prior to going into our coastal permits. And so we purchased the Lansphere. We purchased a property next to Lansphere, and we also purchased the Samoa site. The Lansphere property, which we are currently selling to the federal government, didn't really work out. The mitigation project was very expensive. Essentially, there was going to be an eco levy put on the Samoa property, and I believe it was around $16 million when trucking in all the soils and the hydrology. So we gave up on that property, focused our energy on the spartina removal, and then I think the team did a great job on the Samoa site. So pay attention where my cursor's at. You'll see this body of water here. This is actually salt water from a leaky tide gate, and that's going to come into play here on our mitigation. So here's a kind of a graphic of what we are doing out there. Construction did begin last year, and you'll see here where my cursor's at, that is where that little water body is located, that little saline water body. And that actually came from a leaky tide gate, a Cal Fish and Wildlife leaky tide gate over somewhere over here. I probably should have a better example of that. But that leaky tide gate produced a minor saline, tidally influenced habitat. It had its own spartina and it had its own issues, but we negotiated with the Coastal Commission. We still had to get a coastal permit to create this property for the Army Corps of Engineers and the Water Board to create this saline area here. So this area here is tidally influenced and is actually going to be phased and improved. We were actually going to do a phase 2. Denise, who is on this call this morning, is working on that right now, programming a phase 2 to fix the tide gate, enhance more of this area here with this, I like to call it this dendritic pattern here. And also, you probably note that the barn and the farmhouse have been raised, and that'll also be saline. And then right here is where there is a levee that does separate the freshwater and saltwater wetlands. And you'll also note that up here there is a band of vegetation here that's quite mature, and that was from the Mad River Bridges mitigation from 2010. So it's a mosaic. It's a site that we are seeing that is going to be very successful for us. We do understand that sea level rise is going to take this property at some point, and that did come into the hydrology and the biology of this this particular site. Cal Fish and Wildlife and the Coastal Commission are happy And they're about where we're at in the public ownership of this. And they would actually like to see a lot more public ownership on that southern side of 255. I've heard anecdotally that Cal Fish and Wildlife wants to use that as their last bastion of sea level rise retreat or managed retreat. And so they're pretty happy with this project, and they'd like to actually see more of that. Unfortunately, the downside of that is our ag land loss. So that's a balance that has to be struck. This is a photo of some marble godwits. I believe this was taken in January. Denise took this. We haven't even planted the site yet, and we're not done with the property, and we're already getting an incredible amount of at least avian or bird biodiversity out there, and we're pretty excited about getting the construction done and actually working on phase 2. So the gain on this property for our 2 entities, again, the Army Corps of Engineers and Water Board, not the Coastal Commission. The saline component of this was a kind of a nice to have, mainly for the Coastal Commission. There is a little bit of Water Board saline component, but we've got 30 acres of freshwater wetland, 15 acres of freshwater enhancement. These are just the fancy terms for freshwater. And then we've got almost 5 acres of estuary mudflat and tidally influenced wetland that we're going to be creating once we get that concrete slab out from the former home site. And then the ultimate goal is to transfer the property with an endowment to Cal Fish and Wildlife. And I just want to say what a difference a retirement makes. I wanted to note that part of our negotiations, and Tammy Camper knows this, or probably remembers this, is Cal Fish and Wildlife were not very amenable to a saltwater component of this mitigation. Their former lands manager absolutely did not want that mix. They wanted the freshwater wetlands. I believe they wanted to, it may have had something to do with the waterfowl recreation hunting component, but we had a retirement. We had a new land manager come in who was a little more open-minded. I hate to say that, but he is. His name is Sean Freeze, their new land manager, and I want to give him credit for what he's done in allowing us to have that saline component. So the schedule, we've been allocated the funds. We began our construction. We're going to hopefully finish the planting and contouring. Again, I want to go back to the spartina eradication, which is important. Hopefully late summer, you'll see that. And then phase 2, more hydrology improvement, and then Cal Fish and Wildlife gets to own and manage the property in perpetuity. So with that, I hope that wasn't too quick or too long, but again, the disclaimer, I'm not an engineer or a biologist, but I'll take your questions, or I'll defer to Denise, or maybe even Tammy. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Yes, there's some time for questions, and I'm sure we have some. That was really interesting, and it's good to see what's happening, or we know something's happening, but it's good to hear more about what's going on and the progress you're making. Any questions for Rob?
Yeah, I have one. Rob, those new tide gates along 101, will those relieve the water from the east side of the freeway a lot faster now, or what's the goal there?
So I didn't have too much involvement in the tide gates, but yes, that is what I heard. I did visit some of the sites. They were flapping and flooding, and they really needed to be replaced. And
Rob, I can answer that question. This is Denise, if you'd like, since I was the project biologist.
yes.
Yeah, those tide gates were requested by NOAA Marine Fisheries and U.S. Fish and Wildlife and CDFW to help with salmonid and goby movement. So they really were done for, one, their life expectancy was done, and they were done to help fish passage.
Thank you.
And they're currently being monitored right now by HSU Foundation and HSU students for effectiveness.
Yep. I just signed
Great.
that bill.
Thank you.
There's we have a question in the chat. Any chance that this area can flood over Samoa Boulevard towards the Greenview area?
The potential for flood over there. So if I'm hearing right, that's the potential for flood. Yeah, we worked with a hydrologist, a couple hydrologists who modeled that, and it was deemed not to increase the flood hazard on any normal design yield storm. Obviously, if there was a 500-year flood, we may see something like that, but we were it was modeled and assured that would not flood 255.
And is there information about this project on your website, CalTrans website, and that people can take a look and get more information?
At this point, no, but there should be shortly. We're also going to create a YouTube video. Our public information officer has reached out to the unit to make that also. So there will be, hopefully shortly, something on our webpage, and I'd be glad to send that link to the Rotary folks.
Great. There's one last question here that I think, I don't know if this is something you can answer. How many exits and entrances will there be to 101 between Arcata and Eureka when this is all done? I guess the question is it going to remain the same, or are we going to lose or gain exits?
My understanding is that there will be some road closures, and I'm trying to.
I've heard the Bayside is certainly one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, Bayside. Can get shut
Yeah.
down.
But are there others?
Not that I'm aware of. I know the ability to. Obviously, the ability to cross 101 is hopefully going to be improved with the overpass, and we'll have less games of vehicular chance getting across 101. So
Yes, so Rob, that there are all exits will remain the same.
mhm.
There's going to be no new exits. And entrances will pretty much all be the same. Those medians, like you suggested, are all going to be removed, and they're going to be restored to wetlands.
Right.
Mm.
And so we are actually monitoring those wetlands in the middle of the 101 via drone. So we've got some new technology we're excited about to keep our biologists a lot safer.
Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. I really appreciate you coming and talking to us and telling us in clear terms what's happening out there for us and for the mitigation and the wetlands. I think it's an important project, and in your honor and appreciation, we are making a donation to Tri-County Independent Living who support people with disabilities and to promote equal access to the world. And so we want to thank you, and thank you, Denise, for joining us this morning. And we appreciate it.
With him.
Thank you.
And we'd
Good
like,
job.
thank you again very much. Good job. And just to be warned, Marty somewhere, he didn't share it, but he has a picture of you with a surfboard that, hey, Terry, not
The
quite.
board meeting. Tell them
Move
it's the
it.
board meeting.
The board meeting, a little higher and to your right, Terry, to your right. There we go.
That is my right. Yeah, there.
Here we go. So anyway, so we can't quite, that's awesome. And I encourage everyone out there to go get your spring on. Here's another lovely picture of the Philippines, and go have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody.